Well, thank you so much for coming.
No problem.
And doing this interview with me today.
Yeah.
This is Margot Bullock interviewing Dan the Uber man.
Yes.
Who was so gracious to come in and talk to me a little bit about what he does in the Uber industry and in the app industry and kind of how he can balance that with his real life. So I think before we get into like more complex thoughts, I guess we can start off with just some basic information about you, like where you're from, how long you've been doing this.
All right. So yeah, I am from Berg, Louisiana, which is like an hour south of New Orleans. And I moved here about 2 years ago, and that's when I started Ubering. So before this, I was a bee removal guy. Like I'd remove beehives, hornets, wasp nests, and that was my primary occupation. But it was just such a pain because I was just getting stung all the time. You know, I get stung like 50 times a day, and I was always on like a 30-foot tall ladder on a roof, like about to slide off. It's like I just kept almost hurting myself.
Yeah.
And then I found Ubering, and I think it was right when I turned 21. I was like, oh, I can actually Uber now. Or I found out that once you're over that age, you can Uber. So I was like, oh, I'll try Ubering. And I did it for like 2 days, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. You know, it was just such a good time, such a good time. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to retire from the bee removal business. Yeah.
How'd you get into bee removal?
That's a long one. So I started actually with alligator removal.
What?
So if you remember, I think it was in 2016, there was like record flooding in Baton Rouge. And that flooding kind of like spanned all the way from Baton Rouge to Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is where I lived because I went to Nichols State University at the time. And there was so much flooding that there was just alligators everywhere. Like there were alligators on campus, there were alligators in people's yards, pools, you know, everywhere you could imagine an alligator being, there was. You know, there was an alligator in Walmart, like not in Walmart, but in the Walmart parking lot next to the doors. So it was just like they were just rampant. So I put an ad out in the yellow pages and on Google Ads for alligator removal, and I just started removing alligators. And I did that for a few months. I removed a good bit of alligators. But then I got a call from a woman, and she was like, hey, do you remove bees? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, the cheapest quote I got was $500. I was like, $500 to remove bees? I'll do it for $400. I ordered a bee suit on Amazon. I did that job, and then I put all that money into advertisements. And long story short, I thought that it would be like a small business. Maybe I'd do a beehive a month or something, right? Turns out I was the only bee man that advertised on Google within a 4-hour radius.
Whoa.
Right. So that first week that I started advertising, I got 3 jobs, made $1,200 in 1 week, which like as a college kid, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But then I upped the ad budget. Then I was doing 5 or 6 a week. And like that's how it is throughout the summer and spring times. I would do between 5 and 10 bee jobs a week, making absolute bank.
Yeah.
And
But you were doing this as a college student too?
yes,
Wow.
yeah. So whenever I was in college, I worked a ridiculous amount because I double majored and I was trying to double minor. I ended up only getting 1 minor, but so I was cell molecular biology and psychology as the majors, and then I was supposed to be chemistry and math as the minor, but I only got the chemistry minor. So I was taking up to 23 hours a semester, and I was still working above full time. And a lot of times what I would do is I would do school during the day, and then all night, you know, I was prescribed Adderall for ADHD, and I would just take my Adderall, I'd stay up all night, and I would just remove bees until the morning came. People would call me to remove their bees, and I'd be like, all right, just give me your address, and you'll wake up in the morning and the bees will be gone. And I would just go remove it, they'd mail me a check.
What a nice shtick.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really was.
So you didn't have to be licensed or anything to do bee removal?
No.
You're just like, I've got the suit, so...
Yeah, Louisiana is pretty much a free-for-all. You really don't have to get licensed to do much. Anybody could be a bee removal guy. Anybody could be a gator removal guy. At least I'm pretty sure. Honestly, I just kind of disregarded the laws because it's Louisiana.
Yeah.
But I think you're in the clear.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this and you want to, do it.
Everybody tune in
I
to
encourage it.
bee removal jobs.
Yeah.
Wow, so then how'd you get from bee removal to New Orleans?
Okay, so another weird job that I've been working on is for the last, I'd say since late 2020, so kind of towards the beginning of the pandemic, I started working on an education technology platform. It's basically it's a self-paced course for the ACT and SAT that I'm trying to sell to school systems so that it's free for kids. And I'm gonna like particularly try to target like poor schools in the Bayou region, so that the kids could actually get free tutoring, right? Because there's Princeton Review and all these different test prep companies. And Khan Academy's free, which is awesome, but they don't have like a specifically targeted ACT platform. But the ones that do, like Princeton Review, it's like $500 a kid, and it kind of sucks. Like it's like low quality and everything. I'm sorry that I'm giving the pitch for my thing.
No, it's great.
But in the last like almost 2 years, I've probably filmed 1,000 videos for the ACT and SAT. And I'm organizing it into a platform, and then I'm start trying to sell it to school systems. And I moved to New Orleans just because there's a ton of schools in New Orleans. Like down the bayou, we have a few schools, or really down the bayou, we have one school, South Terrebonne, and I already know them, and I know that they will gladly use my product. But I wanted to come to New Orleans so I could work on the charter schools, because there's a lot of underprivileged kids in those charter schools that never have access to ACT stuff, So that's why I moved to New Orleans. But that also enabled my Ubering, because, there's not very good Ubering in Thibodaux, Louisiana, but in New Orleans it's amazing. So, yeah. So I'd say I moved here for a few reasons.
Wow. Quite a bit of an entrepreneur, too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we came in, you were telling me about how you started also working at a high school?
Yes, yeah.
So what do you do there?
So I am a high school, so I teach advanced math, pre-calc, and algebra 2.
Wow. And you're 25?
25, yes.
Wow.
And I'm not certified to be a teacher or anything. So it was actually, I didn't apply for this job either. It's just I used to go to school there, right?
Oh, okay.
And, and the teacher, so there's this teacher who I really love. His name's Mr. Ty. He's a brilliant teacher.
And this is down the bayou.
So this is actually in Houma, Louisiana.
In Houma, okay.
Yes. So in Houma, this teacher named Mr. Ty, who's just like this genius, brilliant teacher, he's been having some like health issues because of just overworking himself. So he wanted to take one day off every other day. So basically they do A days and B days at that school. So they gave me all of the B days, right? So I get all the same kids on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I started that yesterday, and I loved it. The kids are like angels, they're like so well behaved, and they're just good kids, and yeah, I'm excited about that.
Wow.
So now I'm gonna have 3 jobs.
Yeah, so between that and your test prep company and Ubering, like how much time do you spend now doing Uber?
Doing Uber.
Versus like when you started maybe?
So on weekends, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I always work over a 12-hour shift. And Uber and Lyft. So you can only Uber for 12 hours straight, and then they shut you off, right? Because it's like some weird law where, they don't want truckers and transportation people falling asleep at the wheel, right? But you could do 12 hours of Uber and then 4 hours of Lyft, because they don't communicate with each other. So even if I'm working all week on my test prep platform and now on teaching high school, I'll still be able to work, 40 hours a week, but just in a 3-day period. Yeah. Because you got to get it while the getting's good, And the weekends are just very profitable as an Uber. Like in New Orleans, if you pull a 14, 15-hour shift on a Saturday, you're going to make $500 to $700 in a day, which is good money.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. But I guess you kind of also have to know how to kind of work Uber very well. And to be honest, since this is about Ubering, I Uber in a way that is like frantic. When a passenger is not in my car, I speed. Because I'm trying to maximize the amount of money I make in the shortest period of time, because we don't get paid by the hour, we get paid by the trip. Yeah. Right? So in between trips, I'm speeding. If I need to use the restroom, there's so many construction sites in New Orleans right now, I just find a porta potty, pull over, pee, and then go. Yeah. Right? I don't eat, like I don't stop to eat or take breaks. Like when I do a 12-hour shift, there's a 0-minute break in that 12-hour shift. Usually like in the morning before I start, I'll buy like just like a box of cereal, and I'll just like munch on it as I'm driving. So I go pretty hard with the Ubering.
So you're really a hustler, because that's 40 hours a week doing that, plus, 20 hours doing your new teaching profession.
Yes.
And then working on your other business in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, like, honestly, I don't find myself to be a particularly, like, hardworking person. Like, I'm not one of those people that just have, like, the drive, you know? But I love all three of my jobs. You know, like Ubering, I just have such a good time just driving around people in New Orleans because everybody's so friendly and nice. Like you, you're literally doing an interview with your Uber driver. And no, I just love it. You meet all kinds of different people. They're usually kind. And you're just driving them around, having a 10-minute conversation with them. And so I love that. I love teaching, you know, even though I've only done it for a day. But my kids are amazing. They want to learn. They pay attention. They're smart kids. And then the test prep platform, honestly, I've been working on that for no pay this entire time because I haven't even tried to sell it yet. I want to wait till it's completed. But hypothetically, even if I knew that I would never make $1 from that, I would still do it. So like all three of my jobs are jobs that I just love doing. So it makes it easier. It makes it not feel like work.
That's great.
And you know, the diversity of the jobs also is nice because it's not like I just Uber 90 hours a week. Or it's not like I just work on the platform 90 hours a week. It's like I have like a kind of equal balance of all three.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's nice.
Does it ever feel weird for you that you're, even though you're working like for Uber full-time, essentially, Uber and Lyft, you know, but you don't receive any benefits from doing that, you know?
No.
Do you get any kind of like benefits with your car or insurance or anything?
No, none.
No.
So really, like the only benefits, quote unquote, are you know, a lot of companies do discounts for Uber drivers, like Take 5 oil change. You know, so
really?
you get 25% off an oil change, but that's not like a benefit from Uber.
Yeah.
But we don't get any like health insurance options or dental options or really any options whatsoever. Our only compensation is the money that we get deposited into our bank account from the trips. And yeah, and not a lot of people know this, but Uber drivers don't make a giant percentage of an Uber trip. You know, because it doesn't tell us exactly what percentage we're getting, but I'll Uber somebody from the airport and the trip will be a $50 trip and I get like $18 off of it. So they pay us definitely less than half of the total price. And if you really think about their running costs, I mean, it's an online platform. They don't need 1 million employees. They don't pay for the gas. They don't pay for the insurance. They don't pay for the car, which is a depreciating asset. They really should have low expenses, ridiculously high profit margins. And they have people that are trying to support families. You know, I'm just lucky that I am not trying to support a family because I can make do without health insurance. But a lot of people can't, you know. And if I was sickly, or if something tragic happened, I would just be absolutely screwed. Yeah. So it is weird not having the health insurance.
Yeah, especially since you're giving so much of yourself for this job. And I mean, like I feel like Uber's kind of a high risk in work environment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, and it's getting riskier and riskier. Because in New Orleans, like carjackings have just skyrocketed. I'm pretty sure they've doubled in the last 2 years, and they were already pretty high. I see videos all the time, which I need to stop following these accounts, but I follow these accounts on like TikTok, and they'll just post dash cam videos of like Uber drivers getting guns put to their head. I saw one the other day of this woman being, basically the guy told her to drive to a back alley, and he executed her, took her car. Actually, so I took the Uber sticker off of my car. And the reason why I did that is because a lot of people assume, oh, this car's parked and they have an Uber sticker. They're probably waiting for somebody to jump in the car. The door's going to be unlocked. So people will jump in the car, put a gun to them, rob them. So yeah, it really is getting a little bit scarier, you know, as time goes by.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that you had kind of been witness to a stickier situation like that too.
Yeah, and that's the other big thing about Ubering. It's like sometimes you could just take an Uber and it brings you to a really bad area, you know? And I Ubered this girl. I'm not going to say where I Ubered her to, but I Ubered her into a bad neighborhood. And as I'm driving away, I see a woman on the side of the road being strangled against the hood of a car. And it was a much larger woman strangling a tiny woman who at first glance, I thought it was a child. The woman was probably 4'11". And the woman, who is like 6 foot tall, is strangling her both hands and spitting in her face. And the smaller girl looks like she's like fighting for her life. Like it looks like she's going to lose consciousness. So I pull over and I call the police. I ask them how long it'll take. The dispatcher is like, we don't know yet. And I was thinking, the last thing I heard in New Orleans, the response times are up to 2 hours. So I was like, okay, if I just like let this happen, the woman's going to be strangled to death. So I shot a 2-second clip of it, just so I had proof that she was in imminent danger. And then I jumped in. And basically, you know, I didn't do too much. Really the main thing that I did was, so me and another bystander restrained the larger woman, and she was on the ground being bear hugged by the other woman bystander. And when that happened, I thought the fight was going to be over. But then the smaller girl runs up and soccer kicks her in the face and starts stomping her head into the ground. And I'm talking like stomping. So I was like, okay, I can't let this happen. So I went up behind her, and I made sure to do it in like a gentle way because she was much smaller. But I like bear hugged her, pinning her arms to her side, and kind of lifted her up and just walked away with her. So now I'm thinking, okay, now the fight's over. But then the bigger girl gets up, starts running at us. So I'm trying to run to avoid her getting to the girl. But eventually she grabs her hair and starts beating the back of her head. So I let her down. And when I let her down, I actually did feel bad because I put her in like a disadvantaged situation. Like I allowed her hair to get grabbed. So I was like, I'm sorry. And she's like, B, you held me. Can I?
Yeah, you're fine.
She was like, bitch, you held me. Bitch, you held me. And she keeps saying, bitch, you held me. Bitch, you held me. And I'm like a nerd. You know, I was dressed in my teacher's outfit because that was the day that I went go shadow. So I'm in my teacher's outfit. I'm in a white Toyota Prius, looking as nerdy as possible. And I'm just trying to communicate with the woman. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I wasn't trying to like disadvantage you. I was trying to like help you. Like, I don't want you to go to jail for stomping this woman to death. And she just keeps saying it. Bitch, you held me. Bitch, you held me. And long story short, she eventually breaks the grip of the woman grabbing her hair and runs towards her car. So when she runs towards her car, I'm thinking, oh, she's going to run me over. So I stand next to my car. I'm ready to jump on the roof so she can't pin me, right? But she opens the back seat instead of the front seat. And that's when I was like, oh, it's about to go down.
Yeah.
So I jump in my Prius and I take off. And Priuses don't really take off. They go very, very slow. So I'm taking off. I'm looking in the rear view. She's fumbling with the gun. And eventually she puts it about a foot above her head. And I'm pretty sure she fired like 10 rounds.
Just like in your direction?
In my direction. I was really far away at that
Wow.
point. So I tried to ask the police how many rounds she fired, because like whenever you're in a state like that, a lot of people think that you would remember things clearer. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times when you're in that state of panic, your brain just fills in the dots. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if she actually fired 10 times. You know what I'm saying? I just know that I saw a gun. I was far away. She's lifting it up in the air, and I'm like, you know, I was just petrified.
Yeah.
And sadly, my dash cam was not on. But I'm lucky I had that little 2-second video.
Yeah. So do you have a dash cam?
I do have a dash cam.
Is that something that's given to you by Uber? Or is it
No, Uber doesn't give us anything.
Yeah.
So no dash cam from Uber. You have to buy it yourself.
And it's another way to protect you.
Yes.
But it's not a way that they want to give you protection.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I do with my dash cam, anytime I'm in between trips, I unplug it. And the reason why is because you only have a certain amount of storage on the SD card. And I like to get like probably 2 or 3 days of video, put it into my computer, put it in a Dropbox and save the videos, just in case something happens in the future where I need proof of like a safely dropped off trip, you know. But after trips I unplug it. And I unplugged it after my trip, and I really wish I'd have kept it on because, but to me it seems ridiculous that Uber doesn't provide people with dash cams.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of so many Uber drivers getting their lives ruined, because that's their livelihood, due to like false accusations. So I had a woman, I remember this very specifically, her name was Ursula, right? Which is a horrible name. Who names their daughter Ursula? Like, come on, bro. But I was driving her to the Golden Corral, right? And it was like a really expensive Uber because there was like a big surge that day. Right, so I drop her off, and legit 10 seconds later, I get a notification, your account has been disabled. So I'm like, okay, what happened? So I'm trying to figure out what happened, right? So I call Uber support, and they were like, your account is permanently disabled. And I was like, permanently? And they said it was because she reported me for drinking while driving. She said I was actively drinking while driving her to Golden Corral, which which is absurd. Like an Uber driver
Also
wouldn't just
to
take a
Golden
swig
Corral.
to Golden Corral. I know, like, and at this point, I had a 5-star rating for like over like 5,000 trips.
Yeah.
So it seems like Uber would kind of be like, oh wait, this guy literally has a perfect Uber rating and 5,000 trips. Maybe he's not drinking while driving. But they immediately banned my account. And the way I got it unbanned is as soon as I got off the phone with them, which this was probably 20 minutes after the allegation. I drive immediately to the emergency room. I got a full blood panel drawn so that I had proof that there was no alcohol or no drugs of any kind in my system. I emailed it to the Uber support, and I basically had to harass them. I emailed it to them like every 30 minutes until somebody responded. Because it's actually really hard to get in contact with Uber support. Like as an Uber driver, to actually get in contact with a human being, it takes a very, very, very long time. Like sometimes they'll put you off for days at a time.
Wow. But
Yeah.
this is like your paycheck.
That was my paycheck.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking, oh, I'm going to have my life ruined.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking I'm going to get evicted or something. Because that was before I had another paying job. All I had was Uber. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so you don't have the protection, the initial protection, which is the dash cam that could have showed, or
Yes.
that you weren't. And then you had to take yourself to the emergency room and
Yeah.
pay an emergency room bill.
Yep.
Right? And
Yes.
then Uber didn't pay that.
No.
They were like, okay, thanks for proving.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that story.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I even mentioned that to the people that I was speaking to on like the Uber chat, and I was like, well, shouldn't y'all have to pay for that, since like this was like a cost of doing, like, you know, it was like a cost of employment.
Yeah.
You know, and they just told me, they were like, we didn't tell you to go to the emergency room. I was like, well, y'all told me my account was permanently disabled.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was some.
And if you had been someone else and your account was disabled, what would you, like, and you didn't have
Yeah.
another option, what would you have done except be
Nothing.
evicted? And
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it. I had another problem. So this is a pandemic issue, if you don't mind me speaking about it.
Go ahead, please.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, Ubering came to like a grinding halt, right? So I tried to apply for unemployment, right? But I was denied. I think that was before they passed the bill that allowed gig workers to get unemployment. But they rejected my unemployment. And I was already kind of, you know, I was working as much as I possibly could, because at that time I only had Uber. I didn't have Lyft yet. So I was working 12 hours a day every single day, like every day. Like there was a month period where I literally worked the maximum amount that an Uber driver could possibly work. And I was barely paying my bills because New Orleans just shut down for the pandemic. Like it shut down. Because we have some, you know, our tourist population at any given time is almost larger than our actual native population.
Yeah.
So, you know, when that shut off, Ubering shut off. And, yeah, and there was this point where they said that, okay, Uber had this policy that they were talking about in the media, and they were really trying to make themselves look good, that if their Uber drivers got sick, they would pay them to stay home, right? Pay them what they would usually make to stay home, right? So I get sick. It's obviously COVID. But I'm pretty sure this was at the point where tests were being rationed for old people and like immunocompromised people. So I couldn't actually get a test to prove that I was sick. So I start taking off. They reject my payment. They don't pay me. And then I realize I don't have enough money to pay my bills. So I was like, because I like, you know, and I feel horrible for this, but these are my only two options. Either I quadruple mask and work, or I get evicted, and I don't pay my car payment. I get my car taken. Like as an Uber driver, if you lose your car, you lose your livelihood. And I literally had to Uber with COVID, 4 masks on, because we had no safety net. We didn't have a government safety net. We didn't have an Uber safety net. They lied to us about the Uber safety net. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that had to make that decision.
Yeah.
And like for me, honestly, all of these decisions are like much lighter decisions because I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, I don't have a family. You know,
Yeah,
but
totally.
there's people that are, you know, 60 years old who actually are vulnerable. They're a vulnerable population. And they had to work through COVID to pay for their entire family. Like they have kids depending on them, you know, which like is an even more weightier decision. So I can only imagine how many people had to do similar things during that time.
Yeah. Wow, and it's not even your fault.
Yeah.
Did you ever get into like doing Uber Eats delivery?
So honestly, I've never done Uber Eats. I hate it. I hate dealing with people's food.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I used to be a Jimmy John's delivery driver whenever I
Wow.
was in I think this was like my last year of high school, first year of college, right? And I hate dealing with people's food. I don't know why. It's just it drives me nuts.
Yeah, and you have to wait for it and
Yes,
take you
yeah,
around.
that's exactly it. It's like there's so much, and especially whenever, so Jimmy John's, your company's making the sandwiches, you're going to deliver it. But like with Uber Eats, it's like you're relying on all these other companies to be like accurate with their predicted times of completion of the order. Yeah,
Yeah.
but honestly, I should have just done that. Like at the beginning of the pandemic, I should have done. I didn't even think of it. I guess it's like we talked about earlier. It's like when you're in that like panic mode. It's like your brain kind of just shuts off. Whether you're in panic mode because somebody's shooting at you, or you're in panic mode because you don't know how you're gonna make the bills. It's just like your brain you get tunnel vision. And you just like kind of double down, dig your heels in, and try to do what you're doing.
Yeah, and you shouldn't. Also, though, you shouldn't be subjected to doing a job you don't want to do just because the job that you have isn't giving you what you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's through like the same kind of company, just a different branch of that company.
Yes. Yeah.
But,
Yeah. That was the most mad I've ever been at Uber. Whenever they said that they would whenever they would pay us, and they ended up not paying us. I posted about it on Twitter. I tried to make it go like viral or whatever because I was like, I know if this goes viral, they would pay me. But yeah, nothing ever happened.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know that there was like a bill surrounding like the gig economy and
Yes.
protection during COVID.
I do think that was one of the first bills passed. So I was just unlucky because when I got COVID, it was like at the very, very beginning because I'm an Uber driver. So it's like most people were like hunkered down, and I was Ubering doctors and nurses to work, So it's just, I got COVID so early on. It was before a lot of the bills that actually helped the people out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a unique time for sure.
Yeah. It seems like kind of a bit of a low time. So why did you keep working with Uber even after this period?
Honestly, as much as I dislike Uber as a company, I love the job. If I could be a taxi driver instead, I would love to do that. You know what I'm saying? I love having 10 to 20 minute conversations with nice strangers that I've never met before and getting to know them. And a lot of times they will, whenever you're a kind stranger and you're in the comfort of somebody else's car, it's one-on-one. People feel comfortable to like confess things that they wouldn't even confess to a therapist. I've had people tell me things that have legitimately haunted me. And it's just people feel comfortable. If you're a kind stranger, people just feel so much comfort with a kind stranger, and honestly, like I like live for that. Like when I get like a wild Uber confession, it makes my night. Or and honestly, like sometimes like. You get to kind of act like a therapist. I have a degree in psychology, but I'm not a therapist. But sometimes I do feel like a therapist because, people ask advice. People like really talk to you at a level that they wouldn't even talk to a loved one. Because, with our loved ones, there's so many, you like as a man, you might not want to look weak in front of your best friend. So you don't tell them things that you should tell them because you're in a bad space. But with your Uber driver, you're never going to see him again. So you can.
Yeah.
You feel more comfortable. And it's just a lot of people just don't have somebody that they can actually talk to about the real things, or they think they don't.
Yeah.
But their Uber driver is somebody they could talk to.
So would you say that's like one of your favorite parts of the job, or the best part?
Oh yeah, I definitely think that's the best part. And it's just like, it's not only the confessions, but it's just the openness. You know what I'm saying? Like even if people don't confess things, I just like the openness of it. They might not have anything to confess, but I just feel like all of my passengers are just, like, I don't even know what it is, but they just open up in an Uber, and it's a good conversation. Because, like, I don't think in everyday life we ever really have non-forced conversations with strangers. Like, if me and you were sitting together in an airplane, right? It's kind of like I feel like it's like a weird thing. You know, it's a weird thing to just like talk to somebody on an airplane. It's like a weird thing whenever you're like trying to like sell somebody on something, or you're doing sales calls, or you're talking to people for your business, or you're working at Jimmy John's and you're taking an order. It's like all the strangers that you talk to, you're talking to them for a reason. Like there's like an end goal for the reason that you're talking to them. Or even if you're talking to somebody at a bar. You know, if you're approaching somebody at a bar, it likely means that you think they're attractive and you're trying to flirt with them. You know, it's like almost all of our interactions are like goal oriented.
Yeah, to meet an end.
But like Ubering, it's literally just, that is just non-existent. There's no goal to the interaction. The only goal is just to kind of brighten their day, brighten my day, just make Uber and fly by a little bit quicker. So I just feel like the conversations are always awesome. Wow. You know, sometimes we'll go deeply philosophical. You know, sometimes they'll get really sad. And especially in New Orleans, people are open already. So I'll be like, hey, how are you doing? And, you know, in another city, people would go, oh, I'm doing fine. But in New Orleans, they might be, oh, well, I had a miscarriage yesterday. You know, it's like they might go immediately deep.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I love that. I mean, it might be sad in the moment, but, you know, I'll Uber people. I'll be like, how you doing? And they'll be like, my wife left me. I'm doing horrible. And they'll just spill it to me, you know?
And you like being that person that can listen to them.
I like being that person.
It's also a good way, I guess, to keep up the practice with your degree in case you never need to use it again.
100%, 100%. I'm thinking about psychiatry in medical school.
Right.
So, I mean, this would give me a little bit of help with that, you know, a little bit of practice. And I have,
So, when are you thinking, when would medical school fit on your timeline?
So hopefully August.
Okay.
Like August 2023. So not too long from now. But I already submitted all my med school applications. And I'm just waiting to hear back about interviews and stuff like that. Or just rejections across the board. You know, you never know. Yeah, so hopefully August. But honestly, even when I'm in med school, I will definitely Uber. Even if it's just like once a month.
Yeah.
I'll definitely do it occasionally. Yeah.
Wow. So where do you think you're going to be applying? Like, or where have you applied for med school?
So I applied at I applied 20 different schools.
Wow.
And so the main ones that I really want to get into is LSU New Orleans, because I want to stay in New Orleans. Tulane New Orleans, again, because I really want to stay in New Orleans. And then LSU Shreveport, because I really want to stay in Louisiana. But then I'd prefer South Louisiana.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know, I applied at some dream schools. You know, everybody applies at like Harvard and Stanford. You know, everybody applies at like the dream schools, even if you have like no chance of getting in, which I have no chance of getting into those places. But you know, you got to apply anyway. You never know.
Yeah.
But I really am hoping to stay in Louisiana.
So when did you realize this like desire to go to med school though?
4 months ago.
4 months ago.
Yeah, this was actually kind of a weird story, if you'd
Go ahead.
like to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So, I originally wanted to do a PhD in neuroscience. That was the goal, because I think neuroscience is the coolest stuff, right? And I wanted to work in like the domain of like neurological devices, because I think that's the future of psychiatry. You know, I think the future of psychiatry is going to be much more directed neurological devices rather than, you know, drugs that actually change the chemical makeup of the entire brain. You know, things that are much more specific. You know, and so I wanted to go into neuroscience. But I just woke up one morning and just changed my mind. And that was like 4 months ago. I just woke up and I was like, no, I'm going to go to med school. Because like all the things that I wanted to do with a PhD, I could do with an MD.
Yeah.
Like, and I could actually do it better. You know, you could do research with an MD. Nobody's gonna be like, oh, you can't do research with me. You have an MD, not a PhD. You know, nobody thinks like that. And also, like a lot of the type of research that I want to do, it would actually benefit me to be a practitioner of medicine. You know what I'm saying? It would benefit me to actually be able to have like a clinical experience with the people, rather than just be typing the papers and crunching the numbers. You know. Okay. So I woke up, decided that, and I literally I Googled how to sign up for the MCAT. I scheduled the MCAT for 3.5 weeks from that day. Like,
wow.
Immediately. Like, I was just like, I'm just taking the MCAT immediately. I went to Barnes & Noble. I bought all of the MCAT books that I could find and just started reading them. And I studied for, again, probably 14 hours a day, every single day, other than the days that I worked. I was able to just work 3 days a week. So I'd study 4 days, work 3 days, study 4 days, work 3 days. So really, I only got like a total of probably like 16 days of studying before the MCAT. And I took it and recently got my scores back, and I'm applying.
Yeah, and you did well enough to apply, to feel comfortable applying?
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, good for you.
99%.
Wow. That's really awesome.
Thank you. I'm good with standardized tests, though. That's why I'm making the standardized testing platform, you know? So it's kind of cheating because I have so much experience with other standardized tests. And really, when it comes down to it, most standardized tests are kind of the same, but just with different jargon. You know, like in my opinion, the MCAT is just all a reading comprehension test that just uses medical jargon and medical terminology that you have to know the background of. But once you know all that background, everything found in those books that I read, once you know that, it's just a reading comprehension test.
Wow. So did you do well, like on standardized tests in high school and stuff like that?
Yeah, I always did good on those. So I took the ACT for the first time the summer of my 9th grade year, and I got a 31. So I did really well. I'm just good with standardized tests.
It just makes sense to you.
It just makes sense to me. And, you know, it kind of makes me feel bad sometimes talking about it, because I know some people that are like absolutely geniuses, like much smarter than me, that do not do good on standardized tests. And then there's people like me that are like much less smart than those people, but I just do better on standardized exams. Like, I think standardized tests, you know, they're not always an accurate predictor. You know, sometimes they're an accurate predictor.
You know how to rig it, especially.
If you know how to rig it, 100%, that really is it. If you know how to rig it, if you know how to think about it, it can way over-predict your intelligence. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just lucky that I am in that category of being good at standardized tests, because they mean so much in our lives. Like, they mean way too much in our lives, honestly. Because if you're really good at standardized tests, you're kind of like allowed to do whatever in this world. You know, it's honestly ridiculous.
Totally.
Like, I don't know. Like you could literally have a 4.0 majoring in like the hardest subjects. You could major in like astrophysics and biochem. Get a 4.0. But if you make like a 495 on the MCAT, they will never let you into med school. Like, it's ridiculous. But like, the fact that you did that good in hard majors shows that that's a better prediction of how smart you are than the MCAT is.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of ridiculous. But again, I'm not going to complain too much, you know, because it helps me.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. I think it is kind of ridiculous that it's, but I mean, it makes people like you, with this new company, it makes you be in a good position.
Yes,
right?
It does. Yeah, no,
So,
absolutely.
What's your timeline with that company?
Okay, so I think that I should be done by the end of this school year. And I really want to be done by the end of the school year, because I'm going to be starting medical school in August. Hopefully, going to be starting med school in August, I should say. But yeah, I'm hoping to be done with it by then. But if that ends up being successful and helps a lot of people, I would like to then, while I'm in medical school, make one for the MCAT. Because whereas ACT prep courses might be $500, the MCAT prep courses are like $3,000.
Yeah.
It's a money racket. And my biggest thing with standardized tests, I think if everybody got equal preparation, it still wouldn't be a perfect predictor, but it would be much fairer. But, you know, whenever I Uber parents at a private school that I'm not going to mention nearby.
Loyola, it's the other.
When I Uber those parents, I always would talk to them about what they did for their children for the ACT, SAT, and college admissions. And they'll be like, oh yeah, we probably spent 10 grand on prep. I'm like, what? They'll pay these tutors $100 an hour to tutor their kid twice a week from 10th grade to 12th grade. Right?
Wow.
And so I used to do one-on-one ACT tutoring as well. And, you know, I had a student go from like a mid-20 score, which is like, you know, 60th percentile, all the way up to a 35. But I tutored him once a week from his sophomore year to his senior year. So you can get a 10-point score jump if your parents are willing to spend a lot of money and force you to spend a lot of time working on it.
Wow.
Right. And, I think that's messed up. Yeah, because
Super
that just
messed
so disadvantages certain people. And I don't know. It's like, it's a horrible circumstance. And that's why I wanted to make the program, because I kind of wanted to even the odds, help people out. But so I probably tutored 100 people for the ACT, right? I would just put ads around, and people would like call me, I had like little signs and stuff. And in my entire time doing it, like the demographics of the people that I Ubered was like, it was literally like, it would appall you. You know what I'm saying? Like every single person I was Ubering was like a doctor's kid. You know what I'm saying?
Ubering or tutoring?
Oh, my bad. Tutoring.
Okay.
Tutoring. My bad. But every single person that I tutored was like doctor's kids, lawyers' kids. Like it's never that I was It's never that I was tutoring like middle class kids or lower class kids. Mm-hmm. Like it was just all kids whose parents could already afford for them to go to college. So I'm getting paid to make these kids better at a test so that they could go to college for free, even though their parents are already rich and they could pay for it. Whereas the kids that actually need it, their parents can't afford tutoring.
Yeah.
And they can't afford tutoring, so they don't get a good ACT score, don't get a good SAT score. So they have to pay out the wazoo for college, but their parents can't afford that. So they just go into a ridiculous amount of debt, or they choose not to go to college. Like the system, like the prep system for the ACT is exactly inverted. Like the prep should be going to the kids who can't afford college. That should be where 90% of the ACT prep goes to. Mm-hmm. But it's completely inverted. Probably 95 to, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 99% of the ACT prep happens to kids that are upper middle class and above. Mm-hmm. The goal is to kind of tilt it.
It's the same thing is true with like the majority of the school systems, like in the United States. Like we have any kind of public or public high school that's doing well is going to get more federal funding than a public school that's doing poorly in the next district over. Yeah. It's like, why are you going to continue to benefit someone who already is benefited?
Yes. Yeah. It's completely inverted.
Yeah.
It's
interesting though that you've been able to use Uber as a way for you to conduct this informal research.
Yes. Yeah. So anytime I need like an opinion poll about something, I use Uber.
That's awesome.
So whenever I first started working on my product, I legitimately had my big old iPad, and while I was driving, I would drive with my knee and I would give them the demo. Which is horrible, it's dangerous, but I just wanted to, get their opinions. Or if there's anything like political going on and I want to see how like Louisiana actually feels about it, I just ask a bunch of people, and I really like it because it's such a good tool because of the openness of Uber. Mm-hmm. And really Uber is a perfect slice of the population. It's not like only certain demographics Uber. It's not like only certain political parties Uber. It's like everybody Ubers. So I get to meet people that I never would have met before, get out of my bubble, and actually like talk to people that believe like vastly different things from me. Like Ubering through the pandemic, I did not believe how many people believe that COVID was really 5G, like destroying our DNA, or like that there's microchips in the vaccine, or and people believe wild things on both sides. They would just tell me things that would just blow my mind, and I enjoyed that because I got to go, oh, so people actually do believe that, because I always thought whenever I'd see that, I'd think, oh, that's just memes. Like nobody actually believes that. Like people just think it's funny, the idea that somebody could believe that. No, people actually believe in the flat earth, and they're willing to debate you about it.
Yeah.
People actually believe in like 5G is killing us and microchips and all that stuff.
Yeah, I one time had, like, it was this first summer after COVID, and I was at this wedding party, and I was talking to this woman whose child had just come to school in New Orleans, too, and we were talking about COVID and the vaccine, and I was like, oh, yeah, like, I just got my third vaccine dosage, and she was like, oh, I haven't gotten a single one. And I'm like, oh, haha, why? And she's like, oh, because of the microchip. And I go, are you kidding? And she's like this 50-year-old, like, grown, well-off financially woman.
Yes.
Who just, like, they get stuck in these crazy mind loops. And it's like, where do you even find that information?
It's genuinely...
You can open that. I won't pick it up.
Okay, thank you. But, yeah, and I mean, I think on most issues, there's reasonable reasons to be on both sides. Like me personally, I'm vaccinated. But if I was talking to somebody and they said, well, it's just so new, like it's only been around for like a year, and like a lot of drugs get pulled off the market after 5 years, 10 years. I'd be like, okay, well, I guess that's not crazy.
Yeah.
But then some people are like, oh, it is a bioweapon designed by the founder of Microsoft Word to kill us. Then I'm like, okay, that's a little wild.
So this brings me to like an interesting question. Did you ever, as an Uber driver, was it ever a requirement to like see proof of vaccination for people to get in your car?
No.
Was that because Uber didn't, it was like not regulated by Uber? Like there's
Well, they knew that they wouldn't have had enough passengers, and they knew that they wouldn't have had enough drivers.
Wow.
So that was like a big thing with a lot of companies. Like they originally wanted to do like vaccine mandates in a lot of companies, but then they realized like, oh, we're going to have like a shortage of employees and it's going to cut into the money. And they're not going to cut into the money.
Yeah.
Like you think Uber is going to give up, because what percentage of the population was unvaccinated at the beginning of the pandemic? What, like 30?
Yeah, the majority.
So that would be 30% of their profits. You know what I'm saying? Like even once the vaccines came out and they're available for everybody, I'm sure in Louisiana, it's probably higher than 30% that are unvaccinated. You think they're going to give up 50% of their profits? No.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Did that ever make you feel kind of like unsafe or
No.
frustrated?
So I'm lucky. Because first off, like most people in our age bracket did pretty okay with COVID, like just statistically speaking. So I wasn't like petrified of it, but I had like a healthy fear of it. But I got COVID at the very beginning of the pandemic, like the very, very, very beginning. And, for me, I didn't really respond that bad. Some people have it horrible. Some people my age die of it, but I'm just lucky I was one of those people that I just didn't respond very heavily to it. And once I had it the first time, I was like, oh, well, the chances of me having it worse the second time are very slim because that's not how the immune system works, So even after that, and then I got vaccinated, and then I was like double confident. And I actually did get COVID 3 separate times. But the last 2 times, I was asymptomatic both times, and I just knew because I would test myself before going visit certain people. So because I had already had it and because I was vaccinated, I wasn't concerned about me dying at that point. But I could see how if you were an Uber driver and you were old, or if you were immunocompromised and you had to work, or if you had to take care of like a grandmother or a grandfather or a loved one, like that would make you freaked out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I definitely think Uber drivers should have been allowed to, like if you're an Uber driver, I think you should be allowed to like check a box on the Uber app that says, I will only allow vaccinated individuals in my car. Like, I think that's something where if you're allowing somebody into your vehicle, you have the right to ask them for anything before they get in your vehicle.
Yeah.
So if you were an older Uber driver and you wanted the vaccine, or if you're a younger Uber driver and you want the proof of vaccine, I think the driver should be in charge of whether or not that happens.
I totally
Does that make
agree.
sense?
Yeah. I mean, because it's not like you're stepping into Uber's car, you're stepping into Dan's car.
Yes, yeah.
And so Dan should be able to say what goes and not. But
100%.
that wasn't even an option for you guys.
No, it was not.
Wow.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't.
And I guess you don't know how much Uber's making per ride, but like the cost or the income for you per trip didn't change drastically during
No.
time. Wow.
Recently, they've upped the price per trip by about 50 cents per trip because of gas price increases.
The price for the trip or what you're getting paid?
Both the price and what I'm getting paid. So we get 100% of that recent price increase, but it's 50 cents.
Yeah.
But
100% of 50.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty much a millionaire now. But but they didn't up it during COVID, I don't believe.
Yeah, so like during the summer, so I was in Montana for the summer, so I don't really know what the gas prices here were.
Yeah.
They were like $5 for a gallon.
I think they were like 4 up here.
So that, all you got from that was 50 cents. And that didn't happen until, September?
A few months ago.
Wow.
Yeah. But, I'm lucky because, I have a Prius, which I love my Prius. I get 55 miles to the gallon. So the gas prices didn't affect me too much. But other drivers, like if you're like an Uber black driver, like, which if you don't know, Uber Black is like where you drive like a nice vehicle, usually like a, like an Expedition or something. I think it's an Expedition.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the big.
Yeah, like the big vans.
Yeah. They're usually black and
Yes.
sleek looking.
Yes, yeah, it's like the cool looking ones. Yeah. I actually have a really funny story about that. Okay, I got sidetracked. Let me finish this real quick.
Okay.
Okay. So, but if you're driving for Uber Black and you have like the big vans and you're getting 13 miles to the gallon, then, $5 a gallon really affects you. Like that really affects your profit margin.
Yeah.
So for them, it should have been up to even more. But okay. So speaking of black Escalades, so I was driving in the French Quarter, and I was behind a black Escalade. And I see the black Escalade hits a kid on a scooter, right? Not very hard. It was like a gentle tap. The kid gets up. He's limping to the side, but he's okay, right? So the black Escalade goes to pull over, and the guy in the back seat rolls the window down, and it was Denzel Washington.
No way.
So Denzel Washington, he wasn't the driver. He was in the back seat. But they nudge the kid, and as soon as he rolls the window down, all the kids start freaking out. Even the kid that was limping just like sprints to the car, like he stopped limping, and like Denzel like got out and take pictures with him, and I waved at him and he waved at me, and he seemed really nice. But it was so funny though, because I was just driving and looking at this black Escalade, and it just bam, hits a kid, and then Denzel jumps out.
Wow. I guess that's like kind of good enough reparations for being knocked off your scooter.
No, for real. Honestly, I would let somebody hit me with a car to meet Denzel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Uber to New Orleans, you see a lot of weird stuff. A lot of weird stuff. I usually try to like take pictures of it when I see it,
Yeah.
But got a lot of wild people in New Orleans,
Yeah. I guess you kind of are in the best position to see all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get to Uber the vampires, and I don't know if you know that there's people in New Orleans that file their teeth down because they believe that they're vampires.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've Ubered plenty of those people.
Wow.
And
there's a big enough population of those people that you've had them more than once.
I've 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
I'd say. Yeah, no, I don't think it's a big population, but like, it's enough. It's enough, And it kind of freaks me out not to discriminate against vampires, but I'm low-key scared they're gonna bite me, because they've told me some weird stuff. So I had this one girl told me that her and her husband got married by taking vials of each other's blood and injecting it into each other. So like they didn't just have vials of each other's blood; they actually swapped blood.
Oh.
And I told them, I was like, y'all realize y'all had like a 9 out of 10 chance of like rejecting your partner's blood and dying. I was like, did you get blood typed? And they're like, no.
So they were just like, whatever, let's...
They just knew it happened. And they were on LSD, so they were like kind of tripping.
Oh, man.
And, yeah.
So they just were like really putting themselves at risk.
Yes. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah.
Wow. Well, speaking of vampires, I accidentally cut my finger.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But yeah, I guess this would be a great place for us to kind of end this conversation.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for sharing all of these stories.
No problem. I enjoyed talking. How'd you cut your finger?
I just picked at it.
Oh, okay. I do the same thing. I
and
did
it's
so
funny.
much.
It was,
I got that right there.
Yeah, it just happened right as we were talking about vampires. So
yeah,
I guess I should probably take care of it then. But yeah, thank you so much, Dan.
Oh,
this
no
has
problem.
been great getting to know you and your work.
Thank you. It was good talking to you. You're a good interviewer.
Thank you. Okay, ending.